Welcome back to your Bestie in Freight, the place where we talk about the real stories, the real work, and the real people who move this industry forward. Today's conversation is a very special one for me. If you have been in tracking, logistics, or transportation for any amount of time, there is a name you have heard and a movement you have felt, even if you didn't realize it at first. I am honored to be joined by Ellen Voie, the founder of the Women in Tracking Association and the Women in Tracking Scholarship Foundation. Ellen didn't just build an organization, she built a home, a voice, and a path forward for thousands of women across the globe. I want to start at the beginning, not the polished version, but the real one. And thank you so much, Ellen, for agreeing to join me on my show. I'm so excited to have you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Ellen, so you founded Women in Tracking in 2007, but movement don't start with paperwork, right? They start with a moment. What did you see in the industry back then that made you say something needs to be changed and I might be the one to do it?
So back in 2006, I was working for a very large trucking company in central Wisconsin, and they hired me to figure out how to attract and retain non-traditional groups. And one of the groups they wanted me to focus on was women. And at the time, carriers weren't really even thinking about bringing more women, especially as drivers. And so I started doing my homework on what do women look for? Why do women come to a carrier? Why do women leave? Why do they come into the industry? And so I started doing that research. And also at the time I was getting my pilot's license. And so I belonged to a women's aviation association. And I thought, why isn't there anything for women in the trucking industry? And so I had a background in nonprofit organizations. And I think that's when you say, why me? I think my background in transportation and nonprofit organizations, that mixture helped me to start with the right board, the right mission, and to launch the association in March of 2007.
It's amazing. Ellen, so tell us what was missing for women in transportation at that time?
Well, first of all, companies didn't even think about hiring women, and women make up half the population. They didn't even think about it. They thought that women wouldn't want to do the job. They didn't think that women could do the job. They didn't think that women would want to be away from home. They really underestimated, again, half the population. And so the other part of it was that women didn't picture a truck and say, oh, I can do this, because they didn't see other women doing it. There weren't women in the ads, and the trucks were designed for men. The truck stops were designed for men. The uniforms were men's uniforms. So it really wasn't a place where women felt that they could fit in. And so it was two parts. One is getting the industry to say there's a place for women, and then getting women to say, I'm welcome there.
That's amazing. So, did you imagine it would grow into what it is today when you started?
No, there's 8,000 members in 10 countries, and I would have never thought that it would grow into such a international, significant organization that does address obstacles that everyone around the world faces in the trucking industry, and that's getting good drivers who are safe.
Yes, I agree. Ellen, what I respect most about your story is that you didn't speak about tracking, you lived it. So you started your career in transportation back in 1980, working as a traffic manager, right, for steel fabricating plant. Later, you became a freelance transportation consultant, helping carriers stay compliant with licensing, permitting, and regulation for over 16 years. So you even earned your commercial driving license to truly understand driver experience, which is amazing. And I also got mine in 2016. That's how, I found out about your story and it really resonated with me. So tell me, why was it important for you to learn this industry from every angle? And how did you earn your CDL? How earning your CDL change your perspective?
That's a good question. I like that question because to better understand what drivers go through, I felt that I should go through it. In the past, I had been part owner of a trucking company, and I had what we called a commercial driver or a chauffeur's license, which meant I could drive a truck. but I hadn't gone through the training to get it the right way. So I felt to go through the truck driving school. I went in Cleveland, Ohio in December of 2008. And I felt like it would give me the credibility to be able to say, I have a commercial driver's license. And it also helped me understand what people go through, especially women. Of course, I was the only female in the class, and it was all men instructors and male students. So it gave me a perspective on what women experience when they get their training. So I felt it added to credibility. It really did give me the credibility.
Yes, and maybe confidence, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, that's amazing. So, Ellen, you later earned a master's degree in communication, and your thesis focused on the complex identities of women married to professional drivers. So that tells me something important. You were already looking at the invisible labor in trucking long before it was a popular conversation. What did that research teach you about women, families, and the emotional realities behind this industry?
So, trucking families, it's a lifestyle. I can tell you that, driving a truck isn't just a job, especially when you're gone for weeks at a time, days at a time, or weeks at a time, and for some drivers, even months at a time. So the job doesn't just affect the person who's driving the truck, it affects their family as well. So whether you're male or female, if you have a family at home, a spouse and children, they're going to miss the driver, and they're going to miss opportunities to spend time with them. So you have to close that gap. And now we have much more technology to stay in touch. We didn't have cell phones and we didn't have, FaceTime and things like that. But one of the things that my research taught me is that a good, solid marriage isn't based on whether they are spending time apart or not. It's on values. Because you could have a spouse who goes to work every day at 8 in the morning and comes home at 5 and still have a really not a good communication or not a good marriage. So it's really not the time and distance apart, it's your values. So the families that stay together are the ones that make sure that they're included in things. They appreciate what the other person does. Like the driver has to appreciate let's say it's the mom at home with the kids. The driver has to really appreciate what the mom is going through as a single parent. But the parent at home has to also understand that you want to take as much pressure off the driver. You don't want to add a burden and say, well, the kids aren't behaving today, because they have enough pressure in their job. So the big takeaway from my thesis was the and it was about women at home. So it was, it assumes the man in the truck and the woman at home. Okay, there could be more research in the future, but that's what my thesis was about. And so the wife at home is two different people. She's one when he's home, and she's part of a couple, and she's a wife. But then when he goes back out on the road, suddenly she's a single mom. She's got to take care of everything herself. And I'll tell you some of the things that people don't think about, but I could never RSVP to like a wedding invitation because I didn't know if he'd be home or not. And yet I couldn't go out with my single friends because I wasn't single. And my married friends didn't really want me going out with them because I didn't have a spouse with me. So it was really hard to fit in as the wife of a professional driver. But I have the utmost respect for the spouse at home when the driver's over the road.
Yes, you described it so wonderfully, and I have lived that life, and I can resonate so much that wives at home, they are single when the husband is driving, and even though you know that there is someone out there working to provide for the family, but you are still alone and you cannot fit in. And I'm glad you did that research, and I still believe, yes, there is more room to do research, and there is need for resources like the ones you created for families who are, having truck drivers on the road. So that's very important, and I appreciate what you have done so far. And I want to talk about something powerful that happened recently at the Women in Trucking Accelerate conference, right? You had a session. It was called She's Strong, but She's Tired. It was something that also I can resonate. Women filled every seat and the floors and the walls, not because of hype, but because something unspoken finally had language. You talked about trauma, leadership, and weight high-performing women can carry silently. What did that moment mean to you standing in that room?
Well, I think we expect too much from ourselves as women. We want to make sure that we're perfect. We want to check all the boxes. We want perfect children. We want the perfect job. And we don't want any chinks in our, in our armor, so to say, because we don't want someone to think that we're weak. So I think we hold ourselves to a higher standard than we should. It's okay if you're to relax a little and maybe not have the cleanest house or the most perfect children or whatever, but I think that we expect too much from ourselves, and in doing so we expect too much from those around us. And I think we really need to allow ourselves to show some vulnerability at times, and also we need to be supporting other women who are going through some of the same challenges that we're going through.
So, what does healing in leadership actually looks like?
What does what look like?
What does healing in leadership looks like? Healing.
Healing in leadership?
Yes.
So I'm going to give you an example. So I was on a panel with a CEO of a logistics company, and he talked about how his leadership team was mostly women. And he said, Ellen, I have a woman on my leadership team who's very, very emotional. And my next thought was he was going to say, well, she needs to learn not to be emotional. That's not what he said. What he said was, I need to learn how to deal with her emotion. That's healing. To me, that's so powerful. It's saying, I'm accepting you who you are, and I want you to bring your whole self to work, and I want you to feel comfortable being the person you are. I don't want you to have to try to fit into this environment, especially if it's not as positive for women if it's created by men. And what I mean is, if the way men make decisions or the way men lead and collaborate and things like that are different than women, because we're made differently. So if the work environment values the way men work, we're going to have a harder time fitting in. So I love it when men say, I want you to be yourself and I will accept that. So that to me is healing.
Yes, that was so beautiful. I was not imagining that answer from the leadership. That's amazing. Ellen, so you mentioned that Women in Trucking has grown to over 8,000 members across 10 different countries, including corporate leaders, drivers, executives. And I love that about 15% of your members are men, because this was never about exclusion, it was about progress. So, what does success look like for you now, not just in numbers, but in impact, and how these 15% men affecting the community?
Well, the reason it's important to have men as part of the discussion is because there's still a lot of men in the industry who have leadership roles. And so they have to believe that women are capable, and they have to support women and advance women. So it's very important to have the men at the table that believe in your mission. But also, I I think success is when women are equally represented in the C-suite, and when women are equally represented as safety directors and maybe diesel techs and things like that. So, and also I used to say, when you'd see a woman get out of the cab of a truck, if you didn't take a second look, because that still happens. People will still say to a female driver, did you just back that in? And I want it to be just common for women to be in all roles in the industry, so that people don't give it a second thought, and they think, yeah, she has a right to be here and she's doing her job.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. Ellen, you received numerous rewards, including Top Female Leader of the Year and Nathy Fowler Champion of Change Award. You speak globally, host a show on radio, and continue advocating at the highest levels. But when all of that is stripped away, what do you hope women in trucking say about these movements 10, 20, 30 years from now?
I want people to say that I was a disruptor, a visionary. I want people to say, Ellen saw the world the way she thought it should be, and then she went to work making those changes. That's what I want people to say. I want them to say Ellen had a passion for making the world a better place by bringing in more women and making it a more level playing field for women and a more welcoming environment for women. And so that's how I want to be remembered.
Sure, you're gonna be remembered like that because that's how I know you, and I know a few other women that know you that way. So that's amazing. I think you are doing amazing job. So Ellen, for the woman listening right now, the ones who is strong, capable, successful, and tired, what do you want her to know today?
Well, first of all, I want women to look at the trucking industry as a place where they are welcome and capable. You know, even if you want to work in marketing or HR, the trucking industry still has a place regardless of what you want to do. But I also want women to push themselves beyond their comfort zone and say, wow, maybe I could get my CDL and be and drive a truck, or maybe I could be a safety director, or I could start my own company. I want women to envision where they want to be and then work towards that goal, because if you don't have goals, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And so I really think that we need to set goals, write them down, and work towards them and let everyone know that's what you're doing and get their support. So we need to, as women, build each other up, support each other, and also make sure that we feel comfortable in an environment that's typically been populated by men.
Yes, I agree. And I want to specifically say thank you to all the men. I didn't know that only 15% of the part of the organization because this is such a male-dominated industry. But for me, I have been always supported by amazing men, truck drivers, dispatchers, safety managers. So I'm just so grateful because I truly think that women have this limiting mindset that being in this industry is not gonna be easy for them. But I want also to join this movement and encourage every woman. And I want them to know that they're gonna be supported by men, most of them, and they're gonna be helpful for them, advising them, guiding them, mentoring them. And this industry is truly amazing, and there is room for everyone.
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
Ellen, thank you so much, not just for building an organization, but for holding space for women to be human in an industry that often asks them to be unbreakable. And to everyone listening, this conversation isn't over, it is just getting started. And if this episode resonated with you, share it, talk about it, and most importantly, check on the strong woman in your life. And Ellen, before we finalize our episode, I know that you want to say something about your book, so
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes. I wrote a book about starting and growing the Women in Trucking Association, and it's called From Dispatcher to Disruptor. And it's really my story about not only the association, but the people who helped me along the way, the people who were instrumental. And it also talks about the history of the trucking industry and how the industry has changed since I've been in it. And so it's a lot about women in non-traditional roles, the history of trucking, and also the history of the Women in Trucking Association. So thank you. Again, it's From Dispatcher to Disruptor, available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and now audio.
It's amazing. I will make sure to put in my episodes if people are interested so they can find the link. Thank you so much, Ellen, for joining. And this was your Bestie in Freight podcast. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.